Hello everyone and welcome to this week's Product School webinar. Thanks for joining us today. Just in case you didn't know, Product School offers product management certificates online and at our 20 campuses worldwide. On top of that, every week we offer some amazing local product management events and host online webinars, live streams, and Ask Me Anything sessions. Head over to productschool.com after this webinar to check them out.
I'm Manjot. As mentioned, I'm a product manager at Google. And my hope from today is while getting to where I stand today, there were a lot of learnings I've had in my life and things that really helped me make the choices that I've made, things that shaped the kind of decisions I've made and helped me reach, along with a lot of people and my mentors and sponsors, reach where I am today. So my hope out of the session today for all of you is that some of those learnings, which took me years to actually understand and learn, I can give them to you within this session. So I think I'll start off with what my presentation, which hopefully, if nothing else, it definitely gives you a bunch of good recommendations of places to travel to. This is Larsen Volcanic National Park. So this is, as I said, so this term, una movida, is what one of my friends called me. And the reason why he called me this is because in what he stated, it means someone who makes things happen. Someone who can make stuff work and figure things out along the way. So this is something I really liked and I wanted to use. So I'll start off with a brief introduction about the kind of things I've done till now so that you all know the kind of, to set a context. And that is Munnar in India. So I grew up in New Delhi and I did my undergrad over there. I studied computer science like a lot of students. And learned a lot of things while I was a student in India. My university was one where, if nothing else, they really taught you how to be proactive and reach out to, whether it's professors, whether it's within your university, outside of your university, whether it's finding opportunities, or whether it's just collaborating with the students. So that is something that my university taught me really well. Then, while I was in my fourth year, I interviewed for Google and got an opportunity to work as a software engineer at Mountain View. So this was one of the first, this was one of basically my dream job, to come work in Silicon Valley for Google, which is at the bleeding edge of technology. And the first role that I had was that of a site reliability engineer. This is basically an engineer within technical infrastructure. And they're responsible typically for a big service, a big product. I was responsible for photos, and I worked on ensuring, in one line, ensuring reliability of the product. We ended up accumulating some of those practices in a whole book that we call the Site Reliability Engineering book. So this was one of the, this was a stepping stone. No, usually before this, reliability was looked at more of a DevOpsy thing, where the engineering org was looked at just operators rather than engineers that actually work towards making themselves obsolete. So this is something that was pretty phenomenal in itself. And then I joined the Google Photos team as an engineer, which made sense. I worked very closely with the Photos team, and that was a product I absolutely loved. So we launched the Photos app in May of 2015, and as I mentioned, I worked in infrastructure. So my job was to ensure that the launch went smoothly, and this was a launch without any issues. So the whole team was very proud of the fact that we managed to increase the traffic by so much and still deliver a very stable product that is loved by so many people. And finally, a product manager in Google Cloud. Now, obviously the question here would be, what really made me change from being an engineer in Google Photos to being a product manager in Google Cloud? Now this is where I'll start talking about some of the thought process that I had along the way. When I was an engineer in technical infrastructure, we were building services from scratch, and while building those services, they became quite popular within Google, and a lot of internal Google products actually started using those libraries. And so what happened was as my experience and expertise in those libraries grew, I became tech lead for a few services. And while I was working on those services, I did the whole process of finding out internal Google customers, finding out what their use cases were, finding out what their pain points were, finding out exactly what all solutions they are currently using, and what all solutions they're using, where they lack. So just getting an understanding of what the pain points of those internal Google services would be. And this empathetic attitude really made me very passionate about not just developing what we already offer, not just figuring out what features should be built to support some specific use cases, but also to understand the whole landscape, really understanding what all are the things that some other product area within Google might be working on, and collaborating with them to build something that would actually help solve a lot of those use cases rather than working in a silo. And when I joined Google Photos, I was working on the backend infrastructure team. What I found missing there was I kept on asking myself, why are we doing what we are doing? Why is Google Photos building sharing? Or why is Google Photos doing something else? And I couldn't, and while working on backend infrastructure, I didn't feel the things that I was working on were the metrics that I wanted to move. So this was the sort of journey I went through, and I realized that what I really wanted to be was a product manager. Considering my background in infrastructure, it made a lot of sense for me to be moving towards a model where I can contribute to products that are very close to infrastructure. Fortunately, cloud was a thing, and cloud was a very growing area. The product that I started working on was Kubernetes, one of the most famous enterprise open source orchestration systems. And the Google managed version of it is Google Kubernetes Engine. So I am a product manager on Google Kubernetes Engine and Kubernetes as well. As I mentioned, there were a lot of learnings along the way. Some of them I already mentioned, but a lot of them along the way which helped me make that choice, which helped me stick to it even today, and which will hopefully allow me to grow more as time moves along. This is Iceland. So one of the first principles. This is one of the basic tenets of my life. In fact, is living by learning. What I mean by this is, even when I was in university, as I mentioned, I was very proactive in picking up new things, especially because the syllabus of my own university was not updated for a very long time. I would pick up subjects, I would just read papers, and once I read papers and books and understood the subject a little bit better and had a genuine question from someone, I would actually just proactively even try to reach out to the professor or to the institute that was leading some project in it. So I would actually very actively follow some projects online and try to figure out, and try to first of all use them into building a solution that I would like to build. And then even sometimes reach out to professors. Now, if you're a student somewhere in India and you reach out to some professors in the States, obviously there are chances that they will not be responding, but you'd be surprised. There are actually a lot of people who, if you genuinely express an interest and show to them what you can bring, they're actually very responsive. So this is something I learned in my life, where you can really reach out to people. A lot of people would actually be willing to help. And I mean, we live in an age where we have the internet. It's one of the best things that has probably happened, that we all grew up in an age where we could get access to so many sources of online courses, online information, that we can just self-start and learn from. Obviously, there's just so much information that you might get overwhelmed and feel a lack of structure, feel a lack of, oh, okay, I want to learn about this subject, where do I even get started? This is where some of your friends, mentors, or experts in these areas would be helpful. They would, if nothing else, give you a very structured approach to how to go about learning a particular subject, which is where I think product school also fits in. So sometimes those things are very helpful. Again, talking to people helps. Being uncomfortably excited. Now, one principle of learning and growing in my life, I've understood growth happens in a very specific zone. There are 3 zones you can operate in. One is when you know exactly what you are doing, so you're very comfortable, and that is not where I think growth will happen. The other extreme is you have no idea what this new thing is. You're trying to understand, you're trying to do too many things at the same time. Chances are you might get too overwhelmed and lose hope and excitement very early on. So that is something that, I mean, it really depends on you as a person. There are people who are very gritty and still stick through it, but then most of the people sort of give out in that zone. And so what happens is it seems too impossible. Like, for example, you see, I don't know, Maddie Ziegler dancing on stage, and you're like, I can never dance like that. What is missing is the grit that went in on an everyday basis. And so I think growth will happen in a specific zone, which is in between those 2 extremes, where it's not like you know the subject matter entirely, it's not like you know the space entirely, it's not like you know the people very well, but you have some idea. So there are some unknowns, and there's some excitement, and there's some things that you might not know. So you should, or at least I try to aim in my life that I remain within that zone, because personal growth happens within there. Also, I mean, the everyday really matters. If you wake up every single day and you're not excited to go work on the things that you're supposed to be working on an everyday basis, I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong. You should truly be excited. And if not, then you should answer the question of what is it that is not helping me be excited for that day. I think I spoke a lot about learning, about doing, but one thing to remember while we're doing all of that is just doing a lot of different things in random directions that's going to sap energy. You definitely need very directed efforts, whether it's learning something from scratch like some new subject, or learning a new skill like product management. But you need to be focused. So one of the things that I recommend to all my friends and all the people who approach me for some advice, and quite frankly to myself as well. There are many parts where I still fail, or I'm still learning, but just generically try to do, which is have an actual life strategy. Instead of trying to figure out everything on an everyday basis, have a generic strategy of what you want to do within a year, within 5 years, within the next 3 months. Again, I'm not saying all of these things are set in stone. Things obviously change. Things change in my life so drastically. It's amazing. But that's what keeps it exciting, right? So I would say that having a life strategy and knowing which direction you're moving in general, is definitely something that will help you set pace of where, or at least be a good checkpoint of where you are heading versus not. So simple things like, when I was in photos, for example, I understood that, do I really want to be doing what I'm doing on an everyday basis for the next 5 years? And I knew that the answer came out to be a no. So when you answer questions like these with yourself, and you know that if that answer is no, okay, do I want to continue for another year? Do I want to continue for another 6 months? Once you answer that question, then you figure out, okay, this is not what I want to be doing. I know I want to be a product manager. Maybe I should start dealing with some product decisions right now so that I get to that point within 6 months. I'm going to obviously use a lot of cliches. But one cliche would be, if you know what success means to you, if you know where you want to be, you just need to find out the price for that and then be able to pay it. Now this statement is a lot of stuff boiled down into one single statement, but well, that's what these presentations are for. And when I say life strategy, another thing to mention is also including your personal life strategy. No matter how much you try, I don't think you can separate out your life decisions from your personal life decisions. So this is something that also helps you in your personal life. Very good point. Do not remain in your local maxima. What does this even mean? I'll give you a very personal story here. So when I was working as an engineer, I was doing really well in the photos team, for example, where I was leading the projects related to optimizing the service as a whole. And like my manager, yeah, you should become the project lead for this, and you should become this and that. And I mean, I was the happy engineer for sure, and doing a bunch of stuff that was very critical to the service, to the product as a whole, but just not product decisions. It was more about the what versus the why. So then, what exactly is a local maxima? A local maxima would be that situation where you're doing well wherever you are, but is that truly your entire potential? Is that truly making yourself as uncomfortable as you could be making yourself in order to get into that sweet zone of growth, of personal growth? So when I asked myself those questions, I understood that this probably, that I think I'm stuck in a local maxima. I think I can do more than this. I think I can have more impact and I can stretch myself more. And one more thing is that there are good and bad parts to every single job. And it's not like your impact increases or reduces as you change your one role from another. It really depends on what you want. When I was an engineer, I absolutely hated writing testing code. It took me thrice as long to write testing code versus the actual implementation code. So I still, to this day, love building products, and it's good that I'm not an engineer, I don't write testing code. But there are grungy parts to being a product manager as well. There are many grungy parts to being a product manager. There are parts where I'm just reading emails, I'm just sending a message from one place to another. I mean, I'm a very sophisticated email router sometimes. And similarly, there are other things that might be very grungy. But then you should be able to make a choice for yourself on whether the good parts are so good that you are able to deal with the bad ones. So this is what I meant by not being stuck in a local maxima, and that is SF. One of the most expensive resources. Now, I heard that a bunch of you were newly minted PMs. So this is something that actually is useful for while living your life, because this is generically true where everyone has limited time. And this is practically why I say the most expensive resource is because, well, you cannot buy time. You cannot get it back once it's gone. So one thing that I realize is how critical just being able to save whatever time I can save in my life. You're commuting, maybe you want to catch up on some of the documents that you needed to read. you are well, commute is just way too long. Maybe you want to move closer to work. This is something, because this is something that I actually did. So I'm using that example. Maybe one of the things that I feel takes up a lot of headspace of all of us as we are working on an everyday basis as a product manager is just what exactly needs to be done today. So one very helpful and concrete thing that I found helps me get around that, or at least save some of my brain time to actually do the work rather than think about what needs to be done, is being able to make a list. There are so many things that keep on coming up on an everyday basis, and things that keep on changing, that you might lose track of, oh, okay, this suddenly came up, I had to do this as well. So being able to create a daily, a weekly, and maybe you have a quarterly or a yearly goal. So being able to create those three lists and keep them updated really helps in being a little more organized about your day, such that if there are items that that got left out today and you need to do tomorrow, you already know while you come in the morning that these are things that you need to do. You don't need to think about them anymore. Your headspace, you're really cleared up in your head as to what needs to be done. So it's just about being able to execute them. The other things that I would suggest here is very, very small things like calendar. The amount of difference that good calendar management can do to your life. So when I became a PM, a very new PM, obviously there are many things, like you need to build relationships with your engineering team, you need to build relationships with your UX, your pricing, your marketing, everyone. And I was a complete engineer, back in infrastructure engineer who had to learn all these new things. So it takes time to be able to learn everything else that needs to be learned. It takes time to learn the new technology that you're going to be working with. It takes time to actually be able to understand the different roles that you have to play, the different hats you have to wear, especially with product management. And this is something that in Q&A, I don't know, probably someone might ask, what is a typical day like? And if you're asking that, you're probably not a PM because there is no typical day. Everything is so dynamic, and which is another reason why I chose to be a product manager, the dynamicism that I really like. The fact that there's so chaos. You have to be a specific kind of person to enjoy and thrive in that chaos. I think I'm just going on a rant here, but as long as you're getting some material out of this, it's great. But the whole point is, if you learn some basic skills around time management, that is a general thing in life that will, for a very long time in your life, help you, whether it's your professional life, whether it's your personal life, whether it's just getting organized, whether it's getting anything at all. And trust me, all of us are learning. So I think I already mentioned some part of this, that you should always be mindful of what you schedule and what you don't schedule. You should have time for your team to help and support them, but not for just a random, oh, let's just catch up here for no reason. Decision-making hacks. Lots of learnings here. Lots and lots of learnings here. Whenever I feel uncomfortable about making a choice, and this is something that as a product manager you have to do on an everyday basis, make small choices and make very big choices as well when it comes to strategy. Whenever it comes to a point where I have to decide which direction I want to go in, if I truly feel uncomfortable, if I feel confused about making a decision in favor of something, then I go for a no. This is actually in line with Google's hiring policies as well. I've been partly on the hiring committee, where we make decisions about package. So whenever we feel we're on the edge, because we absolutely want to be sure about hiring someone, we go with a no. And this is something I follow in my life as well. So why I feel this works for me is because it leaves me more at peace. If I make a decision which I don't feel completely comfortable about, I'd rather not make it than make it and then keep on pondering over it. So this is the other learning here, where once you made a choice, I don't try to second guess my choices. I've made a choice and I just move on. Especially one more thing to do, even before you make any choice, is try to, and this is something that I learned from Jeff Bezos, where he wrote an article once on how he divides decisions into two types. One is reversible, the other ones are irreversible. The reversible ones, the reversible ones are the ones you don't want to be spending too much time on. Even if you make the wrong choice, you kind of realize and then you can go back. The irreversible ones are the ones you definitely want to put some thought into, you want to spend some time gathering the data points and then making a choice. But even then, not second guessing yourself really helps, because that in general just puts you on the path to happiness. I just feel happiness is a choice you can make. And of course, some of these things that I'm mentioning, as I mentioned, are cliches. They might sound like generic life principles, but I feel those things are very useful, whether it's your job, whether it's your life. Being able to divide decisions into those two and then making the choice that you're very comfortable with is something that I try to do on an everyday basis. This applies to everything, whether it's product strategy decision, whether it's which is the user experience you want to go with, whether it's is this the person I want to be working with or not. So all these choices. The other decision-making hacks I would say are concentrate on the product. If you are confused about which decision to go with, the product and your user, it should be your center of your mind. And at the end of the day, your job is to make the product a success. And that is Cliffs of Moher in Ireland. Beautiful place. This is something I learned while making, this is something that just worked for me somehow, where I did not know that I was actively trying to find mentors and sponsors. I wasn't. But somehow there were some people who, once they saw how much struggling or how much work I put in and things like that, they wanted to help out. And this is something that I would very much emphasize on. If you don't have someone you can talk to, if you don't have someone who you call a mentor, and I'll talk about sponsor as well, you should fix that today. So definitely try to find mentors and find sponsors. But the thing about finding sponsors is that you don't find the sponsor finds you. So what you can do is you can reach out to people who you feel can mentor you. I think I mentioned previously as well, when I was in university or some other places, I studied something and I felt like there's something that I can add here or something that I find controversial and I don't agree with. I try to actually reach out to the person online or whatever medium I could reach out to using the medium to them. So what I'm trying to get at is a mentor is someone who can help you, can advise you when you're stuck somewhere, and a sponsor is someone who will actively vouch for you. So they will actively go and talk to other people and tell them that this is a person I can vouch for, they've done great work and we should give them this opportunity. Which is why I say you can find mentors and sponsors will find you by looking at your work. Some of your mentors will become your sponsors. And the more you grow in your career, the more you understand that this is something that is very critical to growth, whether it's your personal growth, whether it's your growth as in more responsibilities. So this is something that is very critical and can make a huge difference to your life. One other personal story here would be first job as an engineer. Literally the first month, and I had to go to this conference, and it was a woman-centric, women in technology conference, and there were some tips and tricks they were teaching us, and then one thing I felt was very wrong, like they completely missed the point there. So I was very shy, and I did not have the courage to speak up in front of everybody. So I later on went when there was a break, and I went and spoke to one of the presenters. And I very genuinely explained to her what I thought should be fixed in the presentation. Somewhere down the line, I think she just really felt like we both connected. And it was since then that she actually started helping me in whether I wanted to go for promotion, whether I wanted her advice on some project, some of the things I was working on. So there are these random bits and pieces that help you along the way. So the point is that you definitely should try to find mentors, and the more you work, the more great things you do, there will be sponsors backing you up. But it's just generically very useful to know that this is something that you also need to make some efforts towards. Now I think I spoke so much about doing a lot of stuff. This is one of my friends. About doing so many things in your life that I think it's very important to not forget that investing in yourself is as important as doing any of those things. Especially being a product manager, a lot of the times you are in a very stressful situation. Handling stress is, I think, one very critical, again, skill in life that will help you in a lot of different places. When I was in SRE and working on reliability of the photos product, a part of our responsibility was to ensure that whenever we get paged, so there was a rotation, there was an on-call rotation, and we could get paged if the service was experiencing an outage. So part of the responsibility there was also to ensure that whenever we get paged, we resolve that situation there and then. And sometimes you get these outages where it's not something that happened internally. You read reports of it the next day in the newspaper. So pretty big deal, pretty stressful situation. And in this stressful situation, you're not only dealing with your team, you're not only dealing with the outage. I mean, there's the problem, that the actual problem. Then you're dealing with people who are pinging you. You're dealing with downstream services. So a very stressful situation that can really test you. And that's one place which really helped and trained me to, despite everything burning. So we actually had an internal meme where everything was burning in the background and this person sitting on the computer, yep, everything's okay. Where you're trying to deal with the situation on hand. And different people have different ways to get better at it. I think one thing I will generically recommend to everyone is, again, more cliches here, eating well. Just concentrating on the small things you can do on an everyday basis that you can really fix in your life. Eating well, just exercising regularly, all these things really help me personally in order to get through the very difficult parts and be able to still focus and concentrate on the task at hand. Passing it forward, this is India. This is Hampi. It's a bouldering place. It's an awesome bouldering place. What I mean by pass it forward is exactly what I'm doing here today. I think I mentioned that in my career, along the way, a lot of my mentors, my sponsors, they really helped me, they really shaped me and helped me get to where I am. And I truly do believe that they try to help you because they can help you. There are things that they learn, but for most part, they're just passing along the knowledge. And that's exactly what I try to do in my life when people try to approach me either online, in person, or through this session. And just that is another message that I would like to pass to all of you. You all are sitting here tomorrow, maybe you're sitting somewhere else. So just try to pass that message along to people. So now I'm going to also talk about some of the product-related and just product management-related responsibilities and some of the things that you have to deal with and some of the learnings there, which would really help you in your everyday role. So people is obviously a huge, a ridiculously huge part of your job role. There is one statement I read somewhere which I completely agree with. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And this is something that we see time and again, where you can form the most beautiful strategy, but if you have a toxic culture, this is not something that would work long term. And how you create a culture? Well, you don't. You set values, and you find people that have those set of values, which is another reason why hiring is so important. Being able to work with the people that you would like to work with. This comes back to the decision-making hacks too. So all those things where you basically set values, and then you find a set of people who actually agree to those set of values that you set. This is very important to the success of your product. And this is one of those things which it's not immediately obvious at all. Or at least it wasn't to me when I started off. I was like, oh, I want to do vision and strategy of the product. That is still true. I still love to do that. But undermining the people aspect of the role is something that will set you up for failure. So be mindful that a huge portion of your everyday responsibility would be influencing without authority. So when it comes to that, you do want to ensure that the people you're working with is a set of people that would make you feel psychologically safe. Psychological safety is one aspect of a team which, if that aspect is missing, everything breaks apart. And this is something that I think Laszlo Bock, who used to be at Google, head of human resources, did research on for years and maybe over a decade, and then finally concluded that psychological safety is one of those aspects of a team which is so critical to the success of and functioning of the team. So we should all strive to make sure that everyone in the team definitely feels included, definitely feels a part, and definitely feels safe to raise their voice and not be shunned from chance of failure. That is Copenhagen. Everyone having a clear mission. This is again something very critical, not just for the sake of having one, but also for the sake of communicating exactly to your whole team. Your whole team should be able to walk down the street, grab random person and tell them, this is what I'm doing. This is the problem I'm solving. If you cannot do that, if anyone on your team cannot do that, I feel I would have failed as a PM. I feel I would have failed even if I was an engineer, I feel I would have failed as an engineer. Just being able to really know why you're doing what you're doing, and what is the problem that you are solving, and truly believing in that mission. This is something that also unites the team into one single mission. This is again one of those things which don't seem obvious in the beginning, especially because when you work as an engineer, you're more, so when I was a tech lead of the services that I mentioned earlier, some services in technical infrastructure, I was doing similar things. I was working with customers being internal Google services. I would figure out their use cases. I would understand, oh, okay, this is the feature that my service is missing. This is what I need to do, and then I just go and code it with my team and be done with it. Life was much simpler. Since oftentimes as a product manager, what you will realize is now you don't have any authority. You're not the one coding. You're not the one setting the technical direction. And so what you need to do is, once you actually talk to the customer, you actually become the voice of the customer. You know exactly what needs to be done. But it is your responsibility to be able to convince every single stakeholder that this is something that will actually solve a customer problem. This is something that will make our company a success. This is something that will actually make a dent, something that is so differentiated that despite competition, you will have users of this particular product or feature. And now there are several ways to do it, whether it's data, whether it's anything else, analytics. But also it's a lot of product leadership. It's also relationship. There are so many times where, especially when you're in the space of market creation and there was no other competing product and you cannot even reveal to the customer what exactly you are building, there are many cases like these where you just cannot justify it cleanly. So it's not a substitute. Data is not a substitute for product leadership. You still have to have that product leadership mindset, but you still need to be able to convince those stakeholders that this is something that will actually solve an unmet market need. So how you do that is, obviously, many times you have to build consensus. I'm not saying we should undermine the fact that the importance of consensus, but there will be many situations, or at least there have been situations in my life, some situations where it's just impossible to build consensus as a whole. There are times when what you have to work with is alignment and not consensus. I mean, again, we obviously do strive for it. We obviously do try to work towards it. But then at the end of the day, when you have a lot of different stakeholders, sometimes you realize that you just cannot make everyone happy. You definitely try to make everyone happy, but you definitely try to be fair. And at the end of the day, as a product manager, what your responsibility, as I mentioned before, is making the product a success. Making sure that at the end of the day, the customer is happy. But I'm not saying at the expense of a team. Then you're doing something wrong. You are the voice of your team. You are the voice of all the work that is being done. And you should be the ones also acting as a stalwart for your own team. Just as much as you should be acting as a stalwart for the customer and the voice of the customer. So I think I will summarize this as there are times when you will make controversial decisions. There are times when you will have to bear the brunt. Actually, not times, for most of the time, you will bear the brunt of criticism. You will be the center point of criticism. And of course, what happens is everyone can say, oh, okay, this was lagging, so I had to wait before I could submit this change. I had to wait for that other change to be pushed. Before I could design the mocks, I was waiting for something else. Before I could design the UI, I was waiting for the mocks. So everyone can say something. Your job is to make sure that the product goes through. So you will be the center point of criticism no matter what happens. And the worst part is you're actually not doing anything. You're just pushing decisions forward. So these are some of the things that you should also consider before deciding to be a product manager. That it's a place where you are not the kind of person who needs instant gratification of that one-line code change somewhere, the happiness that you receive. Oh, I did this work today. This is exactly what I have to show for it. What you have to show for as a product manager is much more intangible. It's much more subtle. And you have to be the kind of person who can go in, day out for a very long time. By a very long time, I mean there are features and there are products that take years to ship. So you are the kind of person that can go on day in, day out without that instant gratification and can still work towards that grand vision that one day it will be successful. I mean, there's still a risk, but you believe in that product being successful when it's actually out. Craftspersonship. What I mean by this is when designing or building products, you have to be mindful of the fact that you're building products for humans. Now, I am a product manager for Google Cloud. My product is Kubernetes, which is a container orchestrator which helps enterprises build applications on top of it. You might argue that, sure, I'm talking about building products for people. What does that mean when I'm talking about containers, orchestrators, applications, developers? What does that mean? You would still be surprised that what I mean still is the developer experience. How long is it taking a developer to build a simple web application which involves a front end, a back end, some storage, some networking, and using HTTPS everywhere, secure services, and things like that. If your developer is taking 10 steps to do something, actually 10 is a very good number, but if your developer is taking a huge number of steps to build this web application, then you're doing something wrong. It's not about the UI, it's not the fancy thing. It's about every single step along the way, those small moments of delight you can give to the customer. Oh, I need to make sure that my domains have an SSL certificate. Oh, I actually don't need to upload them manually. They're handled automatically for me. Wow. Just the small moments. It's like another product that I absolutely love is Slack. It gets every single detail right. So this is what I'm talking about, paying attention to the small details. And this is something that you should be mindful of as a product manager. It's really, it's really sexy to have, I'm doing product strategy and vision and all those high-level things. It is great, and you will be doing that. But then again, if you cannot deep dive into details and be able to understand how those small things in your app work or how the small things in your product work, I think that's a failing. At least that's the kind of failing I try to not fall into, and be very close to what the different aspects of my product. Yeah, and one line, deliver a polished product that you're very proud of, that you would love to use. Last thing here in the learnings is something that is very useful when you're building a strategy. This is actually the title of an awesome talk that I happened to be attending live during KubeCon very recently. KubeCon is the Kubernetes annual conference. Crossing the river by feeling the stones. So imagine you're the general of an army and you're in a battlefield. There are these hills around you and you need to decide whether to bomb the hill or not. You don't bomb a hill because, I read in HBR that bombing this hill, there's a 67% chance that all the generals will bomb this hill, or anything random like, I heard that the weather today is perfect to bomb this hill. You will decide your strategy on the basis of, the enemy lines are there. I know I have these many reinforcements. I know that if I don't stop this particular entryway, my army will not be secure by tomorrow, or something like that. What I mean is, how you develop a product strategy is by understanding the landscape, by understanding the competition, by understanding some of the use cases that people are trying to solve problems for. You definitely have to study lots of things, and this is something, again, that really helped me, the tenet of my life of learning. You definitely have to learn a lot of different things: computer science, psychology, persuasion, economics, game theory, all these exciting things. But all these are just tools. Some of the business acumen and things that you need along the way to be a success in this field are things that you learn by applying those tools. So obviously, going to places and talking to people and learning about their experiences, that is a great way to understand some of the failings that they had, so that you build on those rather than falling into the same pitfalls. So yeah, this is one of the principles I use before building out a strategy. And that is a mural in San Francisco that I like. So yeah, I'm going to end soon enough here. I think a lot of you might be asking the same question about whether or not to pursue an MBA. I think I've already mentioned that I haven't done an MBA yet. And this is a question which is, again, very personal thing. It really depends on what kind of an experience you've had, what kind of things you've done. So an MBA is a degree that will basically help you with, so the first thing that you might feel it as skills, hardcore skills. I feel if you really want skills, if you want to learn a specific subject, there's nothing stopping you. You can go buy a book. A lot of these universities are actually open. You can attend online lectures. You can do a lot of things. There's enough material out there that if you're just disciplined enough, you can actually learn the subject material yourself. So there's nothing, so at least I feel there's not much in terms of actual skills that place might give you. What it will give you, however, is a network. it definitely gives you a very good network, and I don't dispute that at all. One thing that I felt personally was the fact that I worked for so long in Google, and the fact that I was in Silicon Valley, the fact that because of various reasons, I go to meetups, I do a lot of activities, I do a lot of physical fitness stuff. I just was able to meet a lot of very interesting people and manually build that network. So this is a choice that I made for myself, that maybe, at least for now, I will not do an MBA and count on the network that I have built for myself. The third thing, and this is again one of those subtle things which are not easy to detect, that an MBA might give you, is just inspiration, what we all come here for. The more you talk to people who are in your class, who are from all sorts of backgrounds, what it gives you is, it takes you out of your shell. For example, I'm in my Google shell. I'm in this shell of the tech world and the kind of things that I've been doing till now. So talking to all those people from very diverse backgrounds gives you an opportunity to understand what are the different things that you can do in your life. And somewhere down the line, that can actually help you think of, oh, okay, maybe I can combine computer science with biomedical to do something in DNA replication or something like that. Just any problem that you feel would be interdisciplinary that you can combine, or just something new that's absolutely new that you would like to do. But for now, as I said, I've decided that and this is again one of those principles of my own life where I believe in learning by doing. So I decided to first become a PM and see how that goes, and then maybe give this another thought. But at least for now, I have gone with the option of not doing an MBA. Advice to myself 10 years ago when I was still studying. This is one of the things that I do when I pass time. Dance. So I would like to dance more. I think I mentioned that investing in yourself is very important, and you'll be surprised how underrated that is. So I would again definitely mention to all of you that taking out time for things you absolutely love, that help you go longer. Life is a full marathon, it's not a sprint, so you might want to plan for that marathon. Talk more. I think I mentioned this already, that you need to find mentors, you need to find sponsors. Talking to different people helps, gain more experience, gain more insight into the different kinds of life strategies that you can build up. So just talking to more people is something that will inspire you and help you learn from all sorts of people. And don't be as serious. As I mentioned, you try to find out which is the place where you want to get to, what the price is, and then you decide whether you want to pay that price or not. And of course, having fun along the way is always helpful. So yeah, mostly you can take charge of your life is my high-level message. You're not alone. There are people who will help you, and you'd be surprised the amount of help that you can get around you. Prioritizing and saving on time. If you take nothing else from here today, just take the fact that we all are definitely limited in terms of time. So we all need to learn the skill of how to truly answer yourself, to yourself, the question of, is this thing worth my time right now? And then base your life, base everything that you do on an everyday basis on that question. And in the end, it's all about the people. What I mean by this, especially as a product manager, I think I mentioned this, you're a stalwart for your team. You're a stalwart for your users. To be truly successful as a product manager, it's not about the vision or strategy. I think in the end, it's all about making people happy. Whether it's your users, whether it's your engineering team, whether it's UX, whether it's your marketing team, just every single person that you work with. And that's all. My mom was here visiting me, and she was very nice.